If My People Bible Reading, Part 52, Book of Genesis, chapter 38, and verse 7. We left you at verse 6, where Judah, got a wife for Er, his firstborn, and her name was Tamar, or Tamar. Tamar meaning palm. Probably has something to do with what particular area that first thing he saw, but that's okay. We'll just take his word for it. But now we're in verse 7. But Judah's firstborn, was wicked in Yahweh's sight. So Yahweh put him to death. This is the first time we read this in the Word where the Father, Abba Father, just took him out himself. As I told you before in other studies that we've researched, when including the mass killing of wars and famines and pestilence and explosions and everything that goes wrong and everything that goes right, Abba Father is perished. Some 1 point some odd million people perish at his commands. That's documented in the Bible. But this is the first one where it's an individual thing. So what did he do? I don't know, but maybe we'll find out what his other family members did that's similar in the next couple, because it's usually if it falls in the family line, there's something going on. The next one will do it too. So here we go. And we put down in comment, only Yahweh can judge. Only Yahweh knows everything of your life and others. Evidently, Yahweh has every right to destroy something that actually he created, man created through his ability that Yahweh gave him. Verse 8, then Judah said to Onan, lie with your brother's wife and fulfill your duty to her as brother-in-law to produce offspring for your brother. Now, that is not something that we do today, and we're not saying it was something you do then. But one thing we do say is in those days and in these days, your word is who you are. Your word is who you are. You are who you say you are through your word, your actions. Okay? That's what it's all about. It isn't that you're supposed to do it, so you must be doing it today too, and it must be all right. No, it's not all right. It's not. If someone is, Yeshua says in the new covenant, the newer and better covenant than the Torah that you're hearing here, you just read some Torah stuff. The new and better Torah. What does Yeshua say? Take care of the widows and orphans. Now, that's not what he means by taking care of them. Financially, we should take care of a widow. So, in these days, what do we do? Has done something, and he passes away one way or another. Gets in a bad car accident. We don't go in there and take over. We simply financially and friendship-wise, communication-wise, brotherhood, sisterhood-wide, we care for them. Them and the orphans, the people that have no one. That's what we do. Okay? This Old Testament is not a wicked, evil, mean thing that Christians should stay away from. They should read this long before they ever get into the New Testament. Long before they ever do that. So, but Onan knew that the offspring would not be his. It's all about me and mine, and me and mine. Here we go again. So whenever he lay with his brother's wife, he spilled his semen on the ground to keep from producing offspring for his brother. Well, if he made a promise, he keeps his promise. He didn't. What does Yahweh hate even above murder? It's not a trick question, but basically he proves it in his words here. He hates liars. Hasatan is the author of all lies. He is the one that invented lying. He hates liars. Verse 10, what he did was wicked in Yahweh's sight, so he put him to death. That's the way it is. Too bad that doesn't happen today. We wouldn't be all in a big frenzy that we're going through in this particular wonderful year of 2020. Yahweh can come down and just do some whoop on them right for the very next day. What I wanted you to remind you here, and we put down in the comment section the names. And by the way, I do comment a lot more in the written Bible than what I give you here. The names given, the names give away the result of their life and death for some people. The sins of Judah were obvious. However, Judah and Tamar became ancestors of Yeshua. It's through that line, through Perez. Matthew 1:3. Verse 11. Judah then said to his daughter-in-law Tamar, she's becoming bad news here, live as a widow in your father's house until my son Shelah, now I'm going to quote that again, live as a widow in your father's house until my son Shelah grows up, for he thought, well, he too may die just like his brothers. So Tamar went to live in her father's house. Now, as you become, and comment, as you become a Berean apologetic Bible student, the chapters dealing with the names of people come to life once you learn and find out these Hebrew meanings of these names. It's not so boring to read every chapter of every book when you apply a very different way of studying. Institutionalized churches have dropped the ball on this and denied their members a true understanding of the Word. So we hear and obey. And just as you learn the truth of this, Christmas, Easter, bunnies, rabbits, eggs, what God means, what we call him, Jesus, Yeshua, the answer is simple. You cannot go back. You can't go back to the old ways. Sadly to say, most do go back to their old ways because it's an easier road to walk on. It's a pathetic road to walk on. I feel sorry for those people. They're never going to find happiness once you've tasted the truth and you don't stick with it. It burns. Now we go down to verse 21. He asked the man, now this is Judah. He's walking around doing things. He's going places. And he runs into her, Tamar. And she puts a veil on. Still an Eastern custom. And it's hard to tell someone just by their eyes. A lot of people don't know how to do that. So he asked the man who lived there, he tried to pick her up on a roadside. He tried to hire the prostitute, his daughter-in-law. She didn't say who he was. So he says, come now, let me sleep with you. And what will you give me to sleep with you, she asked. So now we're in verses 16 up to 21. And I'm kind of going over it. I'll send you a young goat from my flock. Will you give me something as a pledge until you send it, she asked. He said, well, what pledge should I give you? Your seal and its cord and staff in your hand, she answered. That's a powerful tool of identification. So he gave them to her, and he slept with her, and she got pregnant. Meanwhile, Judah sent the young goat. So what he said he was going to do, he did, to his friend Dulamite in order to get his pledge back from the woman, but he didn't find her. She has the staff. She has identification specifically of who this is. And he asked the men who lived there, where is the shrine prostitute who was beside the road at Enaim? There hasn't been any shrine prostitutes here. So, okay, the word comes up, shrine prostitute. Where did that come from? Well, they're living in Canaan. And once again, what did the Father say about going into this area? Don't mix with these peoples. Don't mix with these people. When Moses goes in and finally turns that over to Joshua, and Joshua is told by the Father, don't mix with these people. And then he's told which ones to get rid of permanently. Permanently. That means men, women, children, servants, go in there and clean house and don't let any of these people DNA exist. And they didn't do that then either. They failed both times. So he went back to Judah, and he told Judah he couldn't find her. So Judah just forgot all about it for a while. And then About 3 months later, Judah was told, "Your daughter-in-law Tamar is guilty of this prostitution. As a result, she's now pregnant." And Judah said, "Bring her out and have her burned to death," because he wanted her destroyed. And as she was being brought out, she sent a message to the father-in-law, and she says, "I am pregnant by the man who owns this identification." And she added, "See if you can recognize whose seal, whose cord, whose staff this is." Judah recognized them and said, "She is more righteous than I, since I wouldn't give her to my son Shelah." And he did not sleep with her again. So his word he did not do. And this caused a lot of problems because his word was his bond. And when the time came for her to give birth, there were two boys in the womb. And as she was giving birth, one of them put out his hand, and the midwife put a scarlet thread on it, tied it to his wrist. And then the first one came out, and his name is called Divider. The first one with the wristband was Zerah. Zerah meaning sprout, and this appears to be a confusing chapter until you really look hard into it, because these chapters, these brings out the evil in men, the goodness in men, in their families, and may just be that, but the perfect life of Yeshua came out of Judah, Tamar, Perez, Zerah. If your family tree appears to be a disaster, you can still have hope that your love, your devotion, your belief and faith in Yahweh through the lines will not be deterred. It's ending the line that ends it all. So you hope for the blessing of more children, and that more goodness will come out of it than bad. This chapter closes the door on every excuse that people have on blaming others, society, life, DNA, whatever. You can have your own destiny in your hands through grace, mercy, and hope in Yeshua, no matter if you came out of a very bad family. And we'll stop there, and we next begin with Joseph being taken down to Egypt, chapter 39.